Hello. This is a workshop on supplemental or supplementary essays, which are part of the U.S. college admissions process. Not for all colleges and universities, as we'll see, but for many of them. Okay, so in this presentation, we're going to look at what are supplemental essays, why they matter, what are common prompts. We'll take a look at some examples, share some tips and some things to avoid. And then we'll look at some resources to help you out and then how to find these essays. And I'll just say from doing this for a while that these supplementary or supplemental essays can be something that people aren't anticipating. And what makes them a bit tricky is that not every college or university uses them, but the ones that do use them, they really matter. So it's worth taking your time with these and giving yourself plenty of time to write them if you're applying to colleges or universities that require them. And probably you are. Most students do. All right, what are they? So additional short-ish essays required by many US colleges. And I say short-ish because as we'll see in some of the examples, sometimes they're looking for 10 words or less. And sometimes they're looking for 650 words or less. And some colleges or universities ask for multiple of these, and some ask for one or even none. And the next bullet point says here they're designed to assess your fit and your values and your interests and your voice, and a chance to help colleges learn more about you. Something to know about many colleges and universities in the US is that they have more applicants than they have space for. And that's where you'll see the acceptance rate. And that's really what the acceptance rate tells you. How popular is the school? How many students are applying versus how many seats they actually have. They have a physical limit of how many students can fit on their campus because of their dormitories and because of their classroom spaces. And it's not easy for them to acquire land and to expand. So if a school has a 25% acceptance rate, that means that 75% of students don't get in. And typically, most of those students are very qualified. They have the academic ability, they have the record, they have the grades and the experiences. And what it comes down to is the college or the university saying, who do we think will fit into our community well and really contribute to our overall community? So that's what they're looking at. How can you share more about who you are with these essays and help the college get to know you better so that they're thinking like, hey, yeah, I really want you to come and be a part of our community. All right, so this is what I was just talking about. Supplemental essays matter because selective colleges use them to differentiate between similarly qualified applicants. Similarly qualified, right? And yeah, when you don't get into a very selective college or university, it's not personal. You know, the college or university never really knows who you are. They're reading, yeah, for 10 or 15 minutes, they're reading everything in your file, your transcript, your essays, your recommendation letters, the school profile, learning more about your school. They're looking at a lot of information. And of course, they can't really know you then. So they're making their best assessment as to whether or not you'd be a good fit on their campus and depending on how many spots they have and all of these things. So what these supplemental essays are is a chance to help them get to know you better and help them see your unique personality and what makes you you. Here are some common and uncommon prompts. I've got my buddy Common here. Check out the album Resurrection if you're looking for a common album to start with. 90s hip hop, good stuff. Okay, common prompts. Why do you want to attend this university? That's the most common. You see this all the time. And they ask it in different ways. But why do you want to attend this university? Which I find a really annoying question. And I'm going to talk to you about a resource to help you answer that question well later on. Tell us about a community that you belong to and your place within it. So something community related about your community and how you define your community and what you contribute to your community. That's also a very common question. Briefly elaborate on an activity, job, or responsibility that's meaningful to you. That's kind of like your extracurricular question. So all three of these are very, very common. Here are some that are a little bit less common or uncommon. What is something that brings you joy? What's so odd about odd numbers? That's from UChicago. UChicago is famous for their uncommon questions, and they change each year, and they're really fun. And they have a whole bank of their previous questions you can look through if you want some uh, fun questions to look through or some good writing prompts. From Tufts, we have It's Cool to Be Smart. Tell us about the subjects or ideas that excite your intellectual curiosity. You know, that's beyond, you can take that beyond, I want to become an engineer. You could talk about engineering, you could talk about something else, right? And this is a chance to help them get to know you. And I love this next one. What's the first song you would play for your roommate on move-in day? So why would they ask a question like that, right? It's not because they want to know your ability to write an essay in English or to solve math equations. It's because they want to get to know you and your personality. What kind of person are you? And it's just fun, right? You don't have to overthink that. Yeah, anything that you think would be fun to play for them, and you don't get much space to answer a question like that. All right, now I'm going to show you two examples of essays, and I'm going to yeah, I'll read through this first one actually, and I won't read the next one. The next one's a bit longer. So this question is, what do you do for fun? We know you lead a busy life full of activities and things that are required of you. Tell us about something you do simply for the pleasure of it. And for this one, you have 150 words. Okay, here's what one of our students wrote. I don't think I will be the next Eddie Van Halen. I'm going to pause right there. Eddie Van Halen, you should Google him for the image. Uh, in fact, maybe I'll Google him for the image here. Oops, can I get out of this? Just because it's worth seeing Eddie Van Halen. He is a um, yeah, Dutch American rock guitarist, as you can see here. Yeah, this is older Eddie Van Halen, but here's younger Eddie Van Halen, and yeah, like 80s hair rock. Yeah, this is a really like I think summarizes Eddie Van Halen well, right? Okay, so this is a student who's saying that they will not be the next Eddie Van Halen. Okay, so I think that the image there is important. I don't think I will be the next Eddie Van Halen, but I love guitar because everyone can invent their own style. I feel like the thing that draws me to guitar, other than the rock star life, is that easily I can get lost in the same two bars for hours on end until I get them right. This entrapment in the technicality liberates me from everything. I adore guitar as it allows me to be silly and partake in customary rites like naming my guitar. He's called Cad, by the way. Cad has taught me about patience and taking a moment to breathe, especially when I mess up in my own private performances, which has only enhanced the fun we have together. All right, I love this short 150 word essay. I think we learned so much about the student here. Okay, this is a student for context because you're not reading the rest of the application who is applying uh, to a university that's focused on engineering. The student wants to study engineering, and they've talked about their interest in engineering in other parts of the essay. And this just shares another side of the student, something that we wouldn't get otherwise. It's not about their volunteering. It's not about their, things that lots of times students think colleges want to hear about. It's just this little fun tidbit that we wouldn't know otherwise. And we also see the student talks about their persistence and their love of learning and their passion for learning in this, right? I can easily get lost in the same two bars for hours on end until I get them right. And it's taught me about patience and taking a moment to breathe, especially when I mess up in my own private performances, which has only enhanced the fun we have together. This is a person who I can see um, likes learning for learning's sake and isn't always just trying to impress other people, but they're in their own private performances and their own practice time. they really work hard to be strong. So all these little things that I learned about the student from this 150 word piece essay. Right. I think that's the kind of thing that I think as you read through the next example, you think about what do I learn about this student? What kind of person are they? How would they potentially contribute to our community? And here's the next slide. And I'm just going to recommend that you hit pause and you read through this. And then you think about what do you learn about the student and what makes this a strong or not a strong essay. It's really up to you. It's a personal choice. There's no definitive answer that says this is or is not strong. But I'm going to share with you what I think in a moment. So again, I recommend you pause, and then I'm going to talk about this in three, two, one. Okay, I'm assuming now that you've paused this, you've read through the student's work, and what I love about this is a few things. Okay, the student clearly has moved around a few different times. So we learn about them being in Canada. We learn about them coming to Tanzania. And it says when I moved to Canada, so we know that they're not from there originally. So I see adaptability. I see passion for a topic, and I see a student who doesn't just talk about the passion, but who has executed on their passion. Together with my peers, we proposed and hosted an art auction to fundraise for the installation of solar panels at our campus. We received 25 works of art from student artists and sold them over a 1 hour online event and raised 1,300 US dollars, the largest amount ever raised at this campus. Right. So talking about how they turn their passion into action. And then they go in and talk about the school. And so we know that they're really interested in Colorado College. And I can tell that they've done their research because they talk about the campus Colorado College being carbon neutral, which is not common for most college campuses, and they talk about ways that they want to contribute. So I think this is another strong example. I don't know if I quite get the student's personality in the way that I do in the last essay that talks about Eddie Van Halen at the beginning, but I think this is a really strong essay that shows uh, what you can do in one of these essays. You can share more about yourself. You can share more about who you are, and you can talk about your interest in the school in a way that is helpful in this particular essay. Okay, some tips for writing strong essays. And my students, I was just in a workshop with them, doing this with them. They said, who's this person here? Why, Common was on the last one. This is Q-Tip from a tribe called Quest, another 90s hip hop group. Thought I'd go with the 90s hip hop because we had Common and we have tips. So we have Q-Tips. I've got dad jokes for days. Come back for more. So here are some tips for writing effective supplementary essays. Okay, use this as an opportunity to share something about yourself that helps the college to get to know you better. Everything that you share within your application is a chance to share something about yourself. So don't repeat things, right? So that's why I loved about the guitar piece, right? Like I wouldn't have known that about that student unless they had written that. I was saying to my students, like, yeah, as a mid 40s dad, I might talk about when I'm writing an application, um, washing the dishes and listening to a particular podcast because, just something about me, and I can share something about me that they wouldn't know otherwise. That I love listening to podcasts about politics or cooking or sports as I wash the dishes and kind of get lost in that world. And also, yeah, it's like meditative for me. Make direct connections between your interests and the school offerings. We saw that in the last essay about how the student talked about their interest in environmental conservation and what was going on at Colorado College. Evidence of research into the college. Again, we talked about that with the Colorado College one. Demonstrate authenticity and your voice and let them get to know you. I see students sometimes try to make their essays sound polished. And you really have the danger now with AI that you can use AI to help you polish your essay, and then it doesn't sound like you anymore. And really, like, even if there's some little quirks and mistakes, particularly if you're a student whose first language is not English, that's okay, right? Like, you want it to be strong, but if it has your mode of speaking and communicating, that's great, right? Like, don't have major grammatical or spelling errors, but it can be authentically you and not be they're not looking for something that Maya Angelou wrote or that, a famous author wrote. They're looking for something that a 18-year-old high school student has written, and they don't expect you to be perfect. Yes, you need to answer the question clearly and directly. So make sure you answer the question. That's always an important one. And then essay must pass their place test, meaning I can't just substitute one college's name for another in this essay and it still works, right? If that's the case, if I can take out Colorado College from the last one and slap in any other college's name, then it's not a good essay. Okay, don't do the following. Use vague or generic statements. I'm persistent. I'm hardworking. Boring, boring, boring. And, anyone can say that. And if we go back to that one about the guitar player, we knew that they were persistent because they had, this little story. This is a little story right here. I can get lost in the same two bars for hours on end until I get them right. This entrapment in the technicality liberates me from everything. That is a two-sentence story that tells us so much about that student without the student saying, I like to practice really hard and consistently, like blah, but showing and not telling, right? Show evidence. Oops, I'm on this one here. Don't quote the website or brochures. I'm sorry, skip to the one before that. Don't repeat your primary Common App essay. If you've already written about something, write about something else. Certainly don't quote the website. This is an important one. Don't talk about the school's rank or reputation or location or size. All of those are topics that typically they don't want to hear, right? I don't want to hear that you want to go to the University of Tampa because it's warm and you're near the beach. That can be true, but don't tell the college that. Tell them it's because you love their art history department and it's close to many, world famous art museums, and because of the professors who are there that you've researched and that you know are great professors, and the students and the work they're producing, and the actual content of the college, not because, yeah, you're excited to go tanning on the beach. Don't write the wrong university's name. That's a big one. Don't try too hard by using thesaurus words. I think I talked about that enough already. Don't, just try to sound like you're using big words. Just use normal everyday language like you would speak. And don't just talk about the university. Use this as an opportunity to share things about yourself that they don't know. Even in the why this college, why do you want to attend, yeah, Oberlin College? Yeah, you can talk about yourself and help them learn more about you. Okay, you can reuse and recycle material, so it's your writing. So if you're writing 5 supplementary essays for several different schools, you can reuse things that you've already written. That's 100% okay. Okay, and be sure to do so carefully though, because you don't want to have mismatched content. All right, and now we're going to do some finding of supplemental questions. And I think I've got to stop sharing my screen. I've got to reshare in a different way. So give me a second here to share entire screen there. Okay, this should work now. Okay, great. So, so I'm gonna check out University of Oklahoma and then St. Olaf and then University of Florida. And these can be rather tricky to find, which is why I'm gonna take the time to do this with you. Okay, so if I sign in here to my Common App account, all right, and I said I was going to look up University of Oklahoma first. Okay, so first I have to have the college listed in my schools here. Now I go to the My Colleges tab. I find University of Oklahoma. And then what I'll first get is just basic information here. Okay, and this is the college information here under University of Oklahoma. And you'll see I get, yeah, rolling admissions means they review your application as it comes in. I've got links to different information that can be helpful. I've got due dates. Okay, so aviation flying majors, November 1st. Cool. I didn't even realize they had that. Okay. The writing requirements is almost never correct for schools, but what I see here is there's questions and then there's something here that says writing supplement. Great. They made it really easy. Writing supplement. I've got questions. I click on writing supplement to questions and it will bring me here. And these text boxes where you see bold, italics, underline, right? These are really helpful in finding these. Okay, so here's the first question, 650 words or less. Please share your leadership experiences and why they're important to you. And 650 words or less. Okay, so that's one essay, and then they have a second one of 650 words or less. So for the University of Oklahoma, you're writing 2 essays of 650 words or less. This one, Please describe your cultural and community service activities and why you chose to participate in them. Um, Students always ask me if it's a 650 word or less essay, what's the minimum? Yeah, you're not going to write 100 words. I'd say probably somewhere between 400 and 650 is a good rule of thumb. So like two-thirds of the space allotted to the full amount, and you don't have to try to get 649 words or 650. Yeah, concise is great. If you have a 500 word essay or a 450 word essay and it answers it well, fantastic. They have limited time to read these things, so that helps them. Okay, so that was University of Oklahoma. Next, we're going to look at St. Olaf. Okay, for St. Olaf, I go here and I don't see that handy thing that said for University of Oklahoma supplementary or supplemental question, right? So then under the application, I click on their questions. And these are questions that I have to answer before I can submit my application to St. Olaf. And I'll see that they have general, and then they have these other sections, including, very nicely for us, short answers. So if I click on short answers, then I see here, what excites you about St. Olaf? 150 words. This is why do you want to go to St. Olaf? Got 150 words. And then I've got some fun ones here. This says, everyone knows, we've read about your accomplishments in your application. No one knows, and there are no wrong answers here. Just be your authentic self. Remember, that's really what they want. They just really want to get to know you. This is really, 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 and truly, this is what they really want to do is get to know you in these. So now it's your turn. 10 additional words to complete each of these sentences. So you have 10 words. Everyone knows that um, for me, everyone knows that I love to go jogging and play ultimate frisbee. I don't know. Maybe I already have those things in my application, so then I would think of something else. Everyone knows that I um, am a morning person and wake up with coffee. I don't know. That's not a great example. I'm just saying, like, you can do whatever you want here. No one knows that I, and then St. Olaf should know that I. So you get 10 words for each of those. And then you have one more, and it says optional. If you could spend a year tackling any issue in your community before starting college, what would it be, and why is that important to you? And you get 200 words. Okay, and this says optional. These other ones were required. This one's optional. Okay, rule of thumb, if it says optional, it's not really optional. There are exceptions. One exception is they might say something like some students' lives and education have been interrupted by family medical issue or by conflict where they're living or something like that. If this pertains to you, then and you want to tell us about it, go ahead. You don't need to, force that. If there's something there and you want to share it, then great. And if not, then that's really optional. But something like this is really not optional. You should really write about something like this here if you're showing that you're serious about the school. Okay, so that was St. Olaf, and we found that in the short answers section of their questions. Okay, next up, I've got University of Florida. So come down here, U of F. And again, no supplemental questions listed here on the left. So I go to questions. Okay, now for UF, we've got very handily additional questions. Okay, and then here under additional questions, we'll see provide more detail on your most meaningful commitment outside of the classroom. Basically, tell us about extracurricular activities. Okay, 250 words or less. Okay, now this is where you have to really go through these questions and look carefully because sometimes there's other questions. One of them here is in the honors program consideration. And for all UWC students, you're considered for the honors program, so you need to answer this 400 words or less. And you can see minimum 150 here. Yeah. How do you imagine or hope the UF honors program will help feed your curiosity and help you achieve your aspirations? And there's a quote from Einstein before that. Okay, so you have to really look through and make sure that you're checking things out to find these questions. That's really the key takeaway here is you never know where these questions are going to be, and you don't want to wait until the end, so you should look through all of the questions they have. Okay, St. Lawrence University, and I go here, I don't see the supplemental questions, so I click on questions. Okay. Now in the questions here, I've got general, I've got academics, activities, contacts, and family. So nothing that tells me specifically it's going to be an extra essay. So I click on, maybe I'll start with academics. And I look here and I see what academic majors at St. Lawrence interest you the most. And I just randomly chose biochemistry. And then it says another one, education, but there's no text box here. Okay. If I look at activities, I see what activities interest you at St. Lawrence. And I just chose a random one. And then contacts. And you see these green check marks next to each of these sections that I've done. And that means I've completed it. Can they contact me on my mobile phone? Yes. Family section here. And I see any siblings applying. Have any relatives ever attended? No and no. And okay, so I've got green check marks next to all five of these sections here. In the questions, in the general, in the academic activities, contacts, and families. And I know that that's the case because I have a green check mark next to questions. That means I've completed all of their questions, and that means I have confirmed that there are no supplemental questions for St. Lawrence University. Now, yeah, this is where it's tricky. They don't tell you up front if there are supplemental questions or not, and you have to look through their application to find it. You can also go on their admissions website and look there. You can always email the admissions rep and say, I looked and I didn't see any supplemental questions, just verifying. But yeah, sometimes they are and sometimes they're not, and they're not well labeled, which makes this a bit tricky. Okay, now that I have the green check mark here, and if I go to my Common App, I'm just taking a brief detour here. I've got check marks next to each of these sections: profile, family, education, testing, activities, writing. Because this is all done, the primary part of the Common App. And I've answered all of the questions for St. Lawrence, and I've got a green check mark here. That means, in theory, I could submit my application. And how I would do that is go to review and submit. And what you'll see here is it says the deadline has passed, okay? Because St. Lawrence's deadline, this is still for last year's applicants who are starting school in a few months. So their application's deadline is done, but otherwise it would say here, typically it would say you can't actually submit because I have a practice account, as you can see up top. So anyways, that's just a little bit of a detour into how that works. Okay, Goucher College. Let's do one or two more of these. I think you get the gist now. Goucher College. Go to Goucher. I'm going to click on questions. And then general, I don't see anything. Again, I'm looking for a text box, one of those things where I can enter text. Here we go. In approximately 100 words, describe what has motivated you to apply to Goucher College. Essentially, why do you want to go to Goucher? Um, I always just want to double check the other sections also, right? Let's just make sure activities. Yeah, what co-curricular? I'm just going to randomly choose something and hit continue just to see, because sometimes a new text box pops open once I've answered a different question, which is annoying, but true. Okay, have you ever applied to Goucher? No. How'd you learn about Goucher? I'm just gonna, oops, I don't want to actually click other because it makes me type something. Yep. No, I do not consent. You can choose whatever you want. I'm just choosing randomly now so I can finish answering these questions and see if anything additional pops up that I have to answer. All right, I'm getting swirly screen. There we go. Family. Has anyone, blah, blah, blah. Do you have any parents or guardians who live in a known address different than your own? No. Any siblings applying? No. Any relatives ever attended? No. Ever worked for? No. Great. And then that should be, yep. So now it brings me to the next section outside there, but I did everything except for the general for start time, early action. Again, I'm just going really quickly through this. No, don't use my test. Yes, need-based financial aid. Yes, I would like work study. That means work study means I can work on campus and get paid. Yep. Yeah, so all I have to do is answer this one question and I'm ready to submit my application in theory to Goucher. Okay, let's see who's next. College of Idaho. We've got Davidson, Colby. Let's skip ahead to Davidson and take a look at Davidson colleges. For all you Steph Curry fans, okay, I've got the writing supplement here. Nice and easy, right? Again, separated out just like it was for Oklahoma. I click on the questions here. and I see 300 words or less. There are just under 4,000 four-year colleges and universities in the US. Being as specific as possible, what interests you the most about Davidson College? The most common question, why? We just saw this for Goucher. We saw it for another school, I forget who. Why do you want to go to this college? Okay, then Davidson encourages students to explore curiosities in and out of the classrooms. What's the topic, activity, or idea that excites you? Tell us why. It could be hobby, book interest. Again, you can see that this is kind of like that extracurricular question or intellectual curiosity question. You could answer this in a few different ways, but you could probably reuse an answer from another school. And then it says, if you'd like to submit your resume, optionally, you can post that here. All right, just because they're fun, let's look at U Chicago because they have, yeah, the most fun questions. Maybe not the most fun if I'm an applicant because I have to take the time to think about them. Yep, and they have theirs separated out, writing supplement. And then here you'll see the questions on this page are being asked by U Chicago. Choose one of 6 extended essay options below and upload a 1 or 2 page response. Whew. Yeah, so it could be a 2 page. It doesn't say if it's single space or double space. This is big. Yeah. Um, okay, and then yeah, we'll just look through a couple of these questions because they're really fun. We're all familiar with green-eyed envy or feeling blue, but what about being caught purple-handed or tickled orange? Give an old color-infused expression a new hue and tell us what it represents. Okay, and you can see that this is inspired by a student who went there. Students are allowed to write their own questions for this, so you can see, yeah. But I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. Famous Bob Dylan song quote. In what ways do we become younger as we get older? Yeah, you can see these are fun questions. And as always, the last one says the classic choose your own adventure. In the spirit of adventurous inquiry, choose one of our past prompts or create your own question and be original, creative, thought-provoking. Yeah, so they're looking for your ability as a writer, a thinker, a visionary, a social critic, a sage, a citizen of the world, a future citizen of the University of Chicago. Take a little risk and have fun. I think these are always interesting questions. Okay, so we're going to come back here now. I think we've looked through the key point is look through and make sure that you're really finding the answers. Okay, and finally, this is, I think, the best, most complete guide to writing supplemental essays. So this is the College Essay Guy, and he has a guide to writing supplemental essays. So here he is, College Essay Guy. Yeah, wonderful resources, well thought out, really helpful, and free. So he's got a little video here to you can watch. You finish watching my video, you can watch his if you want. Okay, then he's got this is great. College specific ones. Okay, you're applying to Pomona, you're applying to Bowdoin. Yeah, I'm just gonna open this in a new tab to show you. He's got a whole guide just to Bowdoin's essay examples, supplements, prompt one, the prompt two, prompt three, and he's got guides for each of these and how to go through and write them and examples of what are good answers and what are bad answers. And yeah, so really, really helpful. Then below this school specific one, he has these guides, how to combine your college essay prompts. So take a couple of prompts and then put them together so you can write one less essay or several fewer. The why this college essay, we talked about how this is the most common one. He's got a whole guide to how to write that in addition to the extracurricular activity one, which we saw several times, the why this major essay, the community essay we saw several times, the short answer ones, those little ones. Um, yeah, the Stanford roommate essay, which is, yeah, they ask you to write a letter to your future roommate. So anyways, I think this is, yeah, the most useful, best place to look for specific guidance to writing your supplementary essays. Okay, and that takes us to the end. If you have questions, you can email me. You can stop by my office. And I hope that you, yeah, have a lovely day and good luck with these. The other thing I told students in class is I recommend that you get started on these during the break between D1 and D2 or 11th grade and 12th grade. The more that if you know you're going to be applying to certain schools, you can start working on those. You can choose that extracurricular. You're probably, if you're applying to several different schools that are, yeah, schools we looked at or places that are pretty selective, you're probably gonna have to write the extracurricular activity. You're probably gonna have to write the community essay. You can just write both of those over break, not even knowing where you're going to apply, and either you'll use those directly or you'll be able to adapt those. And you're probably going to write some of the why this college, but you really need to know which school you're applying to before you can start writing those. Anyways, good luck. Stay on top of things. You're making great progress. And just remember, ultimately, it really doesn't matter where you go. It matters what you do when you're there. So don't get too stressed about all of this. It's really about finding a place that's a good fit for you and not a place that accepts the least amount of students or anything like that. All right. Bye bye.